beer, wine, whiskey, and vodka. 4 drinks that have found a place in every celebration, every heartbreak, and every corner of our society. But have you ever wondered how they're actually different? Can any of them be considered healthy? And scientifically speaking, what is the safe limit of alcohol consumption? Today, on Sculpted Grace, we uncover the truth. Not through judgment, but through understanding. Through a story that might feel uncomfortably real. This is the story of Rohan Mehta, a boy from Pune. Born into a small, middle-class family where dreams were simple: a good education, a good job, and a peaceful life. Rohan was quiet, polite, and deeply attached to his parents. He was never the kind to get into fights or parties. He was what every parent wished for: obedient, well-behaved, dependable. But life had its twists. When Rohan turned 19, he left home for engineering college in Bengaluru. It was his first time away from his family. New friends, new freedom, and a new world where no one asked what time he came back. During his first semester, Rohan encountered his first glass of alcohol. It wasn't dramatic, just a small celebration after exams. A classmate poured him a drink and said, "Come on, bro. Just one. It's college life. What's the harm?" Rohan hesitated. He'd promised his parents he'd never drink. But that night, under the flickering lights of the hostel terrace, he gave in. Just one sip. The burning sensation in his throat felt strange, yet liberating. He laughed a little louder that night. He danced. He felt confident, something he'd never felt before. And so began his journey of just sometimes. Fridays became drinking nights. Soon, weekends weren't complete without alcohol. At first, it seemed harmless. After all, everyone drank. What's the big deal about a beer or two? But slowly, Rohan's sometimes became often. He started looking forward to it, not the parties, not the people, but the feeling. That burst of confidence. That escape. He didn't notice when his grades started slipping. He didn't notice when his savings started vanishing. He didn't notice when his laughter started depending on a bottle. By the time he graduated, Rohan was no longer drinking for fun. He was drinking to feel normal. His first job in Mumbai was supposed to be a new beginning. But the stress of deadlines and the loneliness of city life only made things worse. Every evening, he'd pour himself just one drink. And then another. His parents noticed his dull voice over the phone. His mother asked, "Beta, are you okay?" He smiled and said, "Han ma, just tired from work." But deep down, he knew he wasn't okay. He couldn't sleep without drinking. He couldn't socialize without a glass in hand. He couldn't feel happiness without alcohol. And that's how addiction creeps in quietly, without warning. This story of Rohan is not unique. It plays out in thousands of homes across India, in cities, villages, and even among people who call themselves social drinkers. Today, we'll not only understand the science behind alcohol, but also how society has normalized it to the point that it feels harmless. Let's start from the beginning. You might think alcohol is something modern, something humans invented for pleasure. But alcohol existed long before us. When fruits ripen on trees, the sugar inside attracts microorganisms called yeast. The yeast eats the sugar and releases carbon dioxide and ethanol, the type of alcohol humans drink. This natural process is called fermentation. Scientists believe our ancient ancestors, even before humans evolved, ate overripe fermented fruits. At first, it must have made them dizzy. But over thousands of years, their bodies developed tolerance. This is known as the drunken monkey hypothesis, the idea that our taste for alcohol is written in evolution itself. But the real story of alcohol begins when humans learned to control fermentation. Thousands of years ago, in ancient China's Henan province, archaeologists found clay pots from 7000 BCE containing traces of fermented rice, honey, and grapes. In the caves of Israel, scientists found residues of beer making from 13,000 years ago. Humans have been brewing alcohol long before writing, wheels, or cities. When wheat or barley is fermented, you get beer. When grapes are fermented, you get wine. When rice is fermented, you get rice wine. When apples are fermented, you get cider. All these are natural products of fermentation. But their alcohol content is limited, usually below 15 to 18%, because beyond that, the yeast dies. Then someone discovered a new process, distillation. When you heat a fermented liquid, alcohol evaporates faster than water. If you capture and cool that vapor, it turns back into a liquid, a much stronger one. This is how spirits were born: whiskey, vodka, rum, brandy, and tequila. Distillation changed everything. Let's understand the difference clearly. Beer is made from fermented barley or wheat. It's the lightest of the lot, around 4 to 8% alcohol. Wine is made by fermenting grapes. It contains about 10 to 15% alcohol. Whiskey comes from distilled beer. The alcohol is concentrated through distillation. Its strength usually ranges from 40 to 50%. Vodka is distilled from fermented grains or potatoes. It's purified and colorless, but also very strong, around 40%. Rum is made from fermented and distilled sugarcane. Despite their names, flavors, and traditions, one thing remains constant in all of them: ethanol. That's the chemical that gives alcohol its effects, good and bad. When we drink alcohol, it enters our stomach and small intestine. From there, it quickly dissolves into the bloodstream. If your stomach is empty, the absorption is much faster. That's why drinking on an empty stomach makes you drunk more quickly. If your drink has bubbles like beer or champagne, it intoxicates even faster, because carbon dioxide speeds up absorption. Once in the blood, alcohol travels throughout the body to every organ, every cell. But it especially targets two things: the liver and the brain. The liver is our body's detox machine. It tries to break down alcohol using special enzymes. The first one, ADH, turns ethanol into acetaldehyde, a toxic compound that causes hangovers. Then another enzyme, ALDH, converts that poison into harmless acetate. The problem is that the liver works at a fixed speed. It can only handle about 1 drink per hour. Anything beyond that builds up in your blood and in your brain. That's when intoxication begins. In the brain, alcohol acts like a chemical hacker. It affects neurotransmitters, the messengers that control our thoughts, emotions, and movements. It increases GABA, the chemical that calms the brain, and decreases glutamate, which keeps the brain active. This is why people feel relaxed, slow, and less inhibited after drinking. But alcohol also increases dopamine and endorphins, the feel-good chemicals that make us happy. That's the real trap. The brain starts associating alcohol with happiness and comfort. And with time, it craves it again. And again. And again. That's how Rohan began. Just one drink for confidence. Then one to ease stress. Then one to forget pain. Until he couldn't live without it. In the next part, we'll explore what happens inside the body, how alcohol damages the brain, liver, and heart, and the myths society still believes about it being healthy. I'm Sculpted Grace. And this is the untold truth about alcohol. When alcohol enters the bloodstream, the effects are immediate. The first sip makes you feel light. The second sip loosens your words. By the third, your laughter grows louder. But what feels like confidence is actually your brain slowing down. Your body treats alcohol as a toxin. It doesn't digest it like food or store it like fat. Instead, every cell in your body prioritizes one task to get rid of it. The liver bears the biggest burden. Each time you drink, liver cells stop everything else and focus on breaking down ethanol. Over time, this constant effort causes inflammation and scarring. This is what doctors call fatty liver disease, the earliest warning sign of damage. If drinking continues, the inflammation worsens. The cells begin dying. The healthy tissue gets replaced with fibrous scars. This stage is called cirrhosis. The liver becomes hard, shrunken, and unable to filter toxins. It's a slow, silent death of an organ that once worked tirelessly for you. But the liver isn't the only one suffering. Alcohol also affects the brain. When it enters the central nervous system, it interferes with signals between neurons. Your reaction time slows. Your judgment weakens. Emotions swing rapidly. Have you ever noticed how people behave differently after a few drinks? Some become overly friendly, some aggressive, some emotional. That's because alcohol shuts down the part of the brain responsible for control and restraint, the prefrontal cortex. The person you are when sober is different from the person you become when drunk. In the short term, this might seem funny or harmless. But in the long term, regular drinking changes the structure of the brain. Memory weakens. Focus fades. Decision-making becomes harder. Scientists have found that heavy drinkers lose gray matter faster than non-drinkers, literally shrinking the brain. And then there's the heart. You might have heard people say, "A glass of wine is good for the heart." This statement is half true and half marketing. Early studies observed that people in France, who often drank red wine, had lower heart disease rates. This led to the French paradox theory. But later research found it wasn't the wine that protected their hearts, it was their diet, lifestyle, and smaller portion sizes. The antioxidants found in wine can also be found in grapes, blueberries, or even green tea without the alcohol. In reality, alcohol raises blood pressure, damages heart muscles, and increases the risk of irregular heartbeat and stroke. Even moderate drinking increases the risk of certain cancers, especially breast, liver, and esophageal cancer. The World Health Organization has made this clear: there is no safe level of alcohol consumption. Every sip carries risk. The only difference is how much risk you're willing to accept. So why do we still drink? Why does something so harmful hold such power over our minds and our culture? Part of the answer lies in the brain's reward system. Each time you drink, dopamine floods the brain's pleasure center. It feels good, so your brain remembers it as something positive. With repetition, the brain starts craving that feeling. That's how habits form. The second reason is social. Alcohol is one of the few drugs that society celebrates instead of condemns. It's marketed as a symbol of friendship, status, and relaxation. From advertisements to movies, we're taught that every celebration must include a drink. Think about it: if someone says they don't drink, they're often asked why not. But if someone drinks regularly, nobody questions it. Society has flipped the definition of normal. Another dangerous myth is that beer is mild or wine is healthy. Chemically, all alcoholic drinks contain ethanol. Whether it's beer, wine, whiskey, or vodka, the same substance enters your bloodstream. The only difference is concentration and quantity. A pint of beer, a glass of wine, and a small peg of whiskey often deliver the same amount of alcohol. Let's break it down clearly. One bottle of beer, about 330 ml at 5%, contains roughly 14 grams of pure alcohol. One glass of wine, 150 ml at 12%, also has around 14 grams. One standard shot of whiskey or vodka, 45 ml at 40%, contains the same. So when someone says, "I only drink beer," or "I just have wine," what they're really consuming is the same chemical, in nearly the same amount. Now, let's talk about tolerance. Many people proudly claim they can handle their drink. In reality, tolerance isn't strength, it's a sign that your brain and liver have adapted to the poison. Your body becomes less responsive to alcohol, so you need more of it to feel the same effect. This creates a dangerous spiral. Over time, the person doesn't drink to feel high, they drink to feel normal. Without it, they feel restless, anxious, or even sick. That's dependence. The human brain doesn't easily distinguish between pleasure and survival. Once a substance consistently provides comfort or relief, the brain marks it as essential. That's how addiction forms, not from weakness, but from biology. Let's look at what happens when someone tries to quit after long-term use. The brain, used to constant alcohol exposure, struggles to rebalance. This causes withdrawal symptoms: shaking hands, sweating, nausea, panic, even seizures in extreme cases. That's why quitting abruptly can be dangerous for chronic drinkers. But there's hope. The brain is remarkably capable of healing. When alcohol use stops, gray matter begins to recover, neurotransmitters rebalance, and sleep improves. The body slowly repairs itself. The earlier someone stops, the more complete the recovery. Still, the social environment often makes recovery harder than the addiction itself. Imagine Rohan. After years of drinking, he decided to stop. The first few weeks were torture: sleepless nights, headaches, mood swings. But the real challenge came when he met friends who said, "Come on yaar, just one drink. Don't be so serious." We live in a culture where saying no to alcohol requires more courage than saying yes. Movies glorify it, ads romanticize it, and society excuses it. Alcohol is one of the few poisons that comes wrapped in celebration. So how do we break free? The first step is awareness. Understanding that alcohol doesn't add joy, it temporarily blocks pain. It numbs emotions rather than healing them. The second step is honesty with ourselves and others. If you find yourself needing alcohol to feel confident, to relax, or to forget, that's not fun anymore. That's dependency. And the third step is compassion. Judging people for drinking doesn't help. Understanding why they drink does. Most people who struggle with alcohol are trying to fill an emotional gap: stress, loneliness, trauma, or boredom. Addressing the root cause is far more powerful than blaming the symptom. Rohan learned this the hard way. One night, after drinking heavily, he collapsed at his office party. He woke up in a hospital bed, with his worried parents by his side. His liver enzymes were off the charts. The doctor said softly, "If you don't stop now, your body won't hold up much longer." That moment changed him. Not instantly, but slowly. He attended support groups, changed his circle, started exercising, and replaced his nightly drink with walks and journaling. It wasn't easy. There were relapses. There were moments of doubt. But over time, the fog in his mind began to clear. He started rediscovering what real happiness felt like, the kind that doesn't come from a bottle. In the next and final part, we'll talk about the wider impact: how alcohol shapes families, relationships, and society. And most importantly, what we can do as individuals to build a healthier culture around it. I'm Sculpted Grace. And this is the truth that no one tells you about alcohol. Alcohol doesn't only affect the body of the drinker. It affects everyone around them. Every year, millions of families are torn apart not because of hate, but because of alcohol. Parents lose their children to drunk driving. Spouses lose trust after nights of violence or silence. Children grow up watching arguments that always begin with just one drink. Behind every statistic is a face, a home, a story. In India, studies show that nearly 1 in 3 adult men consumes alcohol regularly. For many, it begins as social drinking. For some, it ends in dependence. According to the National Mental Health Survey, over 57 million Indians need help for alcohol-related problems, yet only about 1 in 20 ever receive treatment. Why? Because of shame. Because of silence. In our society, drinking is often laughed at when it's casual, but condemned when it becomes serious. There is celebration at the start, and isolation at the end. A person struggling with addiction is rarely seen as sick, they're seen as weak. But addiction is not a moral failure. It's a medical condition. And like every illness, it needs care, not judgment. Let's think about what alcohol does to a family. The drinker might believe they're only harming themselves. But the real pain often falls on loved ones: the sleepless mother, the anxious partner, the frightened child. Children who grow up in homes with heavy drinking are more likely to face anxiety, depression, or even develop the same habits later in life. What we normalize, we pass on. And that's how alcohol quietly travels across generations, not through DNA, but through imitation. Still, there's another side to this story, one of change, resilience, and hope. When Rohan decided to quit, he felt lost. His evenings felt empty. His weekends, longer. But within that emptiness, something began to grow: space. Space for healing. Space for hobbies, for friends who didn't need alcohol to laugh, for mornings that began with energy instead of hangovers. He started running. At first, only a kilometer. Then 5. Then 10. Each step was a small victory, a reminder that life can still feel beautiful without escape. He reconnected with his parents. He apologized to people he had hurt. He even volunteered with a support group that helped young professionals overcome substance dependence. It wasn't a miracle. It was slow, often painful, but real. Over time, he realized that quitting alcohol wasn't about giving something up, it was about gaining back everything he had lost. His health, his relationships, his peace. That's what most people misunderstand. Recovery isn't punishment. It's freedom. And yet, change cannot happen through individuals alone. It needs society to evolve with them. We need to start asking better questions. Instead of saying, "Why don't you drink?" maybe we should ask, "Why do we feel the need to?" Why have we made alcohol the symbol of adulthood, confidence, or celebration? Imagine if every party didn't need alcohol to be fun. Imagine if every friendship could deepen without intoxication. Imagine if the next generation grew up believing that emotional strength doesn't come from a bottle, it comes from awareness. The alcohol industry spends billions each year convincing us that drinking equals happiness. But happiness isn't found in a glass. It's found in clarity, in connection, in control. Governments can raise taxes, run campaigns, and restrict sales. But the real change starts with each of us in the choices we make, and the example we set. If you drink occasionally, drink mindfully. Know what's entering your body. Know when to stop. If you find it hard to stop, seek help, not shame. There are thousands of organizations, counselors, and online support groups across India and the world that specialize in recovery. You are never alone in this journey. And if you've already quit, even for a short while, celebrate that. Not with pride, but with gratitude. Because every day without alcohol is a day your body gets stronger, your mind gets clearer, and your relationships grow deeper. Remember, the goal is not perfection, it's progress. Rohan's story isn't about regret. It's about redemption. His scars are reminders, not sentences. And maybe that's the real truth about alcohol, it shows us what we crave, but also what we're capable of overcoming. Life doesn't need a drink to feel worth living. It only needs presence, purpose, and peace. If you're watching this and you relate to Rohan, know this: your story doesn't have to end in silence. It can begin in change. Because change doesn't start with the world around you. It starts with one decision inside you. One honest look in the mirror. One conversation with someone you trust. One day without the bottle. That's all it takes to start again. And when you do, you'll realize that the joy you were chasing was never inside the drink. It was inside you, waiting all along. I'm Sculpted Grace. Thank you for watching. And remember, the greatest strength is not in how much you can drink, but in knowing when you no longer need to.